Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, October the 13th, and we are starting one more live stream. Let's take a look. Let's see if we have some of our friends over here. Let me check the chat window. No messages so far. All right, so let's discuss some of our topics in our backlog. Okay, this one has come up at least a couple of times during the current week, and it's about the currency exchange rate, particularly when you're sending money to Brazil. So there are many different ways to send money to Brazil. I'm gonna try to categorize in two main types of remittance to Brazil. One is going to be for up to 10,000 US dollars. And if you're sending up to 10,000 US dollars to Brazil, you may use something like Wise. Wise is the new name for TransferWise. So it was TransferWise in the past, and now they have the domain wise.com. That's the one I use. I use to send small remittances cross-border. You know, if I'm sending to the United States, if I'm sending from the United States to Brazil, or if I'm sending from Brazil to Portugal, I'm going to use TransferWise for those like smaller remittances, okay? Now, if you're sending a lot of money to Brazil, TransferWise is not going to allow you to use the app. Most people, I would say 95% of people, they are going to use a regular bank to send the money to Brazil. And when you are using regular banks, you're going to have a challenge, right? A challenge which is how to get more currency for your currency of origin. So let's say if you're sending money from the United States, naturally you're not going to get the same exchange rate that you would see on a major exchange reference website such as XE. So if XE is saying that you're going to get 5.4 Brazilian reais for a dollar, when you send the money, you're not going to get that. Actually, even with TransferWise, you never get the same thing. You're going to get something a little bit lower, because the gap between what you think the currency rate should be and what you're getting, it's going to be the compensation. It's going to be the compensation for the bank to exchange the currency, right? So the challenge we see over here, and the challenge we saw actually at the firm, is that some clients, they were assuming, like they were buying real estate, and they were assuming that they would get for the currency the very same thing that they saw online on XE. And that was very surprising to us. Like we don't actually discuss that in our initial meetings, and we don't even discuss about that in our own board meeting, because in our understanding, like people travel abroad, people do things internationally, and pretty much everybody knows that you never get like the same currency exchange that you see as a reference, right? But for a couple of clients, they were actually expecting the exchange rate to be whatever they were seeing online, and so they were in a kind of tough spot, because they were provisioning for all the purchase of real estate in Brazil to be done with a certain currency exchange rate. And to make things even more challenging, they thought, well, I can pick the currency exchange rate, which is pretty weird from my perspective. But listen, there are all types of clients out there. And for some people, they could think, you know what, I'm going to pick a currency rate. I'm going to tell the bank what I'm willing to do, and the bank should work with me. But of course, that's not how things work. So just a heads up, right? Whenever you're buying real estate in Brazil, whenever you're sending a large amount to Brazil, you're not going to dictate the currency exchange. This is going to be dictated by the bank in Brazil, not the bank in the US or elsewhere. But the banks in Brazil, they're going to be dictating how much you're going to get in terms of Brazilian reais. Of course, you can do some shopping around, but in our case, we actually do the shopping on behalf of our clients. So whenever we are bringing a currency exchange rate, we are actually, getting something that is typically much better than what you would get, from everyday banks. All right, but still, you should understand that if you're provisioning your monies to buy property in Brazil, currency exchange is going to be lower than the reference point, okay? And in addition to that, you also need to provision. I usually recommend at least 4% or 5% is going to be even better for closing costs. All right, I hope that makes sense. That was something very interesting. Like we have so many clients, buying real estate in Brazil. But every now and then we do have, a client who's not going to understand the dynamics of currency exchange. Sometimes we think, well, maybe we should, explain the whole dynamics for currency exchange from the get-go. But then, in our opinion, is like a disservice to the 95% of our clients who get it, right? Like, again, people travel abroad, people send the money abroad. So, 95% of people, they do understand the dynamics of currency exchange. And therefore, we're not going to waste our clients' times, discussing about that up front. We will rather wait to discuss whenever this becomes a topic of interest within the real estate purchase transaction. Yes, I see Bill. Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Marisa. Glad that you have Marisa and Ricardo over here, our warriors in Portugal who are, spearheading our office in Lisbon. Good to see you over here, Marisa and Ricardo. All right, let's see what Bill has to say. Oi, Luciano, for the love of music, all the classics were composed by the greats, Sérgio Mendes and Antônio Carlos Jobim, Stan Getz, João Gilberto, started 54 years ago, been in love with Brazil ever since. A timeless period of music. I like your bossa nova picture. Yes, Bill. So that was my promise from our last live stream on Wednesday. And the idea was to bring some topic of interest, not, just like legalese or real estate. I know real estate is interesting, but there is so much more to Brazil. So yes, today we're talking a little bit about bossa nova. Bill has started by sharing some of the names. Yes, Sérgio Mendes, João Gilberto, and Tom Jobim. Actually, Tom Jobim's name is Antônio Carlos Jobim, but he's actually known as Tom Jobim. These are some of the main, like either singers or writers of bossa nova. And what I think, in my opinion, right, like everybody has a different opinion or, different takes on bossa nova. But from my perspective, bossa nova is so amazing because it remains current, right? Like, so if you think about a rhythm, about a type of a music style that was created so long ago, right? Like, I mean, in a couple of decades, like in 3 decades, it's going to be like 100 years old, believe it or not. But it remains so current. It remains current to a point, like if you go to Rio de Janeiro, if you go to Santa Teresa, right? Like that's a neighborhood I really love. Santa Teresa neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro, right? If you go to Armazém Bar, okay, Armazém Bar, it's a bar, like right in the middle of Santa Teresa, and they play a lot of bossa nova, and they play MPB, like Brazilian popular music. It's another gender. Like this music remains so current still, all of this time after the creation of the rhythm about this genre, and bossa nova remains current. So not only you can go out in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, or other cities and listen to bossa nova, but if you are listening to to a radio, you can also hear bossa nova still. And in addition to the bossa nova, like the authentic bossa nova remains as a main influence for many other rhythms in Brazil, right? So just sharing some of the names, right? Just like Bill was sharing, I'm sharing over here. Some of the names like João Gilberto is also in Bill's list. Tom Jobim, that's the main spelling. The authentic bossa nova, of course, like it's no longer produced. So it comes to us, Brazilians who like bossa nova more like in waves. So right now, I'm listening to a lot of Elis Regina, but then this goes dormant for several years, and then for some reason it comes back, and then I listen to bossa nova again. Okay, but these are some of the names I highly recommend, because João Gilberto, Tom Jobim, and Vinícius de Moraes, they are so famous. My take is for you guys to enjoy Nara Leão and Elis Regina. Nara Leão and Elis Regina. Elis Regina is absolutely amazing. Nara Leão as well, but I particularly like Elis Regina. So these are some of the tips, right? Some of the tips. Now, there is within bossa nova, there is a very interesting song like Garota de Ipanema. Garota de Ipanema, it was ranked by the Guinness Book of Records as one of the most played songs in the world, right? And I know that a while ago it was ranked as the second most played music ever. Okay, Garota de Ipanema, and it is from the bossa nova era. Something also very interesting about Garota de Ipanema, some of the stats. This music was recorded, I think, by over 500 different singers, including Amy Winehouse. It was also recorded by Frank Sinatra, and just 498 at least singers worldwide. So pretty, interesting music. I'm sure many of you probably heard about Garota de Ipanema. And there is another interesting fact about Garota de Ipanema, which is it is played, during whenever you are watching a movie, and then the characters, they are in an elevator. Chances are the music playing as a background music is gonna be Garota de Ipanema, and this became something as an inside joke in Hollywood. Nowadays, I see more like a Easter egg, for those who know the music. Very, very frequent. You're watching a movie, pay attention. If the character is in an elevator and there is a music playing, chances are this is going to be Garota de Ipanema, all right? And so that's another take to the music, like elevator music. That's how some people are going to remember Garota de Ipanema. Another record for Garota de Ipanema, it was included in over 1,500 albums recorded worldwide, okay? So can you imagine like this single music being recorded in over 1,500 albums worldwide? Pretty impressive. All right, I see here Many Moon Acres. Boa tarde, Luciano. Greetings to all. Welcome, Many Moon Acres. And If you have any special likes when it comes to Brazilian music, feel free to let us know. This is like an exchange. This is not a lecture on Brazilian music. So if you like a specific rhythm, I want to hear from you. Tell me what's the rhythm that you like. It's very interesting to our community here of people who are in Brazil, people who love Brazil, people who are planning to go, to come, or stay in Brazil. We have now Hermon. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Hermon. So good to see you over here. All right, so I'm waiting for you guys to share what kind of rhythm do you like in Brazil. Let's take a look at how things are in Brazil in terms of music nowadays. So that's my take, and I'm sure different people are gonna have a different understandings of how music is nowadays in Brazil. But whenever I am in Brazil, these are gonna be the rhythms that I usually see. Like I take a lot of Ubers, right? Like I don't actually rent a car. Like whenever I am, like in the main cities in Brazil, I'm not gonna rent a car. With some exceptions, right? Like if I am in Fortaleza, because I'm gonna be going, like to beaches that are not actually in Fortaleza, then I'm gonna rent a car. It's more convenient. But most of the time, whenever I am in a big city, I am renting. I'm actually, hiring an Uber, and whenever I'm driving, like in an Uber, I'm gonna pay attention to the music that is gonna be played at the Uber, and usually it's gonna be one of those three main rhythms. It's gonna be either country music, pretty common in Brazil. Of course, we don't call it country music. We're gonna call it like sertanejo. Okay, there is pagode, and pagode is like a more I'm not sure, like, but it's a variation of samba. Okay, so not like the traditional samba. It's something like more modern, and closer to the closer to the people. Like samba, it's something that nowadays is seen more as a classic, and pagode is more like nowadays music. We have the funk, and funk is like mostly from Rio de Janeiro. And we also have like mixed rhythms, like it's gonna sound a little bit like rock and roll, but is mixed with Brazilian popular music. Sometimes you can identify like a trait of bossa nova. So there is a lot of mixing, and for some rhythms you cannot even identify what is the main rhythm. So sometimes people are just going to say, oh, all right, like popular, or just pop music. In the United States, it's very common for people to say, all right, pop music, right? So we also have a pop music in Brazil, but at least from my opinion, like the three main genre nowadays are going to be country, pagode, and funk. Okay, now this is more like on a nationwide basis. We also have like something that is more specific to areas, to regions in Brazil, such as forró, axé, frevo, baião, shot, chachado, e maracatu. Most of those rhythms, they are coming from either the northeast or the north of the country. Northeast and the north of the country, they are very, very creative when it comes to rhythms, and they like to keep their own rhythms, like in addition, of course, to whatever it's more like nationwide. But forró, for instance, forró is super common in Ceará, in the state of Ceará. You also have, I see here, Many Moon Acres, maracatu music is lovely too. Yes, maracatu is pretty great. And I remember there was, I used to listen to a lot of maracatu. It was in Pernambuco state, okay? I remember there was a lot of maracatu music, which is a kind of blend of music from the Northeast with Afro rhythms. There was Many Moon Acres for maracatu. I'm not sure if you heard, but there is Chico Science and Nação Zumbi as a great choice of maracatu music. All right, that's a really nice. I used to listen a lot. All right, and Bill is asking me if I have been to the bar where Tom Jobim wrote Garota de Ipanema. No, I have not, Bill, but I do know about this bar. It's pretty famous indeed, and it did start with Tom Jobim, but it's also interesting to note that Garota de Ipanema, it took a different dimension in which you have like many other participants of the bossa nova, both as singers and promoters of the music. There was also a Brazilian top model who was elected, right? Like there was a kind of contest, for the Garota de Ipanema. And the translation here is like, the girl of Ipanema, of course. So there was a contest for, like the most beautiful girl from Ipanema who would get this title. It is so interesting, not only the music, but all the background, background behind this music. Well, I hope, Bill, that you happen to have the opportunity to go to this bar, and not only to this bar, but enjoy Rio de Janeiro in general. Hermon is saying, love me some, Tainá Maria, my favorite song is Come With Me. There you go, Hermon, there you go. Other participants here, William Frost. All right, William Frost says, hi, Luciano, good evening. Afternoon to you, hope you are well. Brazilian music is incredible, it's very diverse and varied. At the moment, my favorite Brazilian artist is Pablo Vittar. That's so interesting, William Frost. Pablo Vittar, it is a very unique singer, and for some, also a controversial singer, but no question about Pablo Vittar being a major name in Brazil nowadays. We have Marcela as well. Welcome, Marcela. Good to see you over here. All right. Who else do we have over here? Many Moon Acres. Yes, I know Nação Zumbi. Lovely. Yes, Nação Zumbi was such a great band. Unfortunately, the main singer, Chico Science, he died like in a car crash only a few years after starting to produce, a great maracatu music. And it was such such an unfortunate event, because this guy, he was pretty solid. I still listen to Nação Zumbi and Chico Science to this day. William Frost, he is a drag queen, so his main theme is pop, but he's from the north, I think, so he incorporates technical brega, plus funk and loads of other stuff, but he changes his style a lot, like David Bowie did. Yeah, really interesting comparison with it. And yes, he's a drag queen, and he has been producing a lot of music. You can listen to Pablo Vittar when you are in Brazil throughout the country. Indeed. All right, so what else? I know some of you guys want to discuss other stuff, not only Brazilian music. So I did discuss at the beginning of our live stream about currency exchange. Another interesting topic of interest we see or we saw this week during our consultations. It was the digital nomad visa becoming potentially a more longer-term route for foreign citizens wanting to stay in Brazil for the long run. Originally, the digital nomad was created as a track for foreign citizens to stay in Brazil for a single year, renewable for a second year, and that should be it. That's what you can kind of understand when you read the original piece of legislation, or better saying regulation, because it comes from the federal government and not from the legislature. So it's more a piece of regulation. It's not like a law per se, but it was created actually under the prior Brazilian administration, and it was created under President Bolsonaro. It was something very innovative because Brazil traditionally never had that many routes open for people to volunteer and live in Brazil, right? It would be more like traditional routes, such as those based on marriage, based on having a child in Brazil, but not so much for someone who says, listen, no interest in marrying, I just want to go to Brazil to have a good time. What can I do to do that? So President Bolsonaro brought an answer to that question with the digital nomad. Again, originally it was for a single year renewable for a second year, but what we see happening nowadays is like for a lot of people getting a second renewal on the visa, which means, or which it makes us conclude that the current administration, which is like President Lula, right, and which is particularly antagonic to President Bolsonaro, they are taking a different interpretation of the visa, maybe saying, you know what, like this thing is really working for Brazil. A lot of people, being paid in the United States in US dollars and spending all of this money in Brazil. So new federal administration, they are allowing for a lot of people to renew the visa for a second time. So that's something positive, and we're gonna keep tracking and making sure that this is how it's gonna work for the long term. And if you have any questions about immigration or a longer term stay in Brazil, let us know so we can discuss here live. Let me see if we have anything else. Bill is saying this was great. Thank you, Luciano. Thank you for participating, Bill. That's the idea, that we can discuss and share interesting things about Brazil live. All right, taking a look here at my backlog of subjects for the live stream. Another client was asking us about getting a driver license. Like, do I need to get a driver license right away? Can I use my driver license from abroad? Is an international driver license a replacement for a Brazilian driver license? So in terms of a driver license, whenever you come to Brazil, you are able to use your driver license for up to 180 days. Okay, 180 days you can use your driver license. After that, you are expected to have a Brazilian driver license. Okay, so 180 days is pretty enough for you to acclimate in the country and also go through all the red tape to get a Brazilian driver license. But after 180 days, you're not supposed to use either your driver license from your country of origin or an international driver license as well. An international driver license is going to be as good as any other driver license. So don't think that just because you have an international driver license, you don't need a Brazilian driver license. Actually, if you have like a driver license from your country of origin, you don't need an international driver license because, again, it's not going to be of much help in Brazil. Okay, something else for you to consider. When you enter Brazil, when you fly into Brazil and you're gonna try to rent a car, they are gonna ask you for your boarding pass. Okay, and if you lose your boarding pass, the boarding pass you get when you're flying from abroad into Brazil, there is a good chance you're not going to be able to rent a car in Brazil, which is kind of weird because I never saw the rule in any other country. But for Brazil, it became actually like regulation from the federal government, which means, the rule goes like this. If the rental car company, if they don't have your boarding pass showing that you did enter Brazil in the last 6 months, and if you happen, to get a fine because, I don't know, like you drove in excess of the allowed speed, guess what? The fine is going to be applied to the car rental company in double, okay? Because what happens over here is like the government, whenever there is a fine, in addition to the fine, they are going to allocate points to your driver license, meaning that after a certain number of points, you're going to lose your license, right? But if you are a foreign citizen, then the government knows they cannot, void your foreign citizen's driver license. In order to kind of make sure that people are not just using a foreign driver license just to avoid the points, they created this rule to enforce the boarding pass on the car rental company, because then they know if they apply the fine in double, the car rental company is going to be in a bad spot. So the car rental company is going to start to enforce, this verification of the boarding pass in order to make sure that the person is not in the country for longer than 180 days. Okay, so that's pretty helpful, believe it or not. You need to remember, if you lose your boarding pass, chances are you're not going to be able to rent a car. And if you are in São Paulo, if you are in Brazil, if you are in Florianópolis, in my opinion, that's going to make zero difference, all right? Because you're going to be much better off by actually driving with an Uber than renting a car. But if you are in other areas, if you are in the Northeast, and if you're going like to different beaches, then maybe you're going to be better off by renting a car. All right, so there you go. That's one more tip from our backlog. Okay, let me see if we have any other comments here in our chat window. Nope, nothing new. No comments for now. So taking a look at our backlog, yes, like this is something I think it's worth, comments here. Should I marry? Like I am in a long-term relationship with a Brazilian national. The Brazilian national cannot travel to the United States because the Brazilian national does not qualify for a visitor visa. Because of that, should we marry in Brazil or should we marry in the United States through a video conference? All right, so let me just explain, to our, participants here in the live stream. So something, again, that's very amusing and surprising to foreign citizens, particularly U.S. citizens, is like whenever you try to marry in Brazil, there is some massive like red tape, okay? The birth certificate with an apostille is just the tip of the iceberg. They are going to ask you for so much more than that, particularly if you happen to have married and divorced in the past. If that's the case, the Brazilian cartório, the Brazilian registry in charge of marriages, they are going to ask you to get like the whole paperwork for your prior marriage, including like license, marriage certificate, and divorce certificate if there was a divorce. Or if you are a widow, then you need to show the death certificate for your former partner. And all of those documents, they need to have an apostille on it. Now, this is kind of the standard across the country, but believe it or not, some states, they are going to go a step beyond, and they are going to ask for a decision on the distribution of assets for your prior marriage, right? Now, I saw clients in this type of position. They said, listen, I married and divorced like 25 years ago. And, I have the divorce certificate, but I have no clue about how to get an apostilled version of the, distribution of assets for this thing that occurred 25 years ago. And then you see like clients in this kind of pickle in which they don't know how to obtain. They want to marry. They talk to the cartório. The cartórios will say, well, not my problem. Go out there and figure this out. So, what we see happening is, like, for some people, maybe they never married before, and therefore the paperwork required for marrying in Brazil is not going to be as extensive. But for those of you who actually married and divorced before, marrying in the United States through a video conference may be a better option. Okay, so in my example, right, like for this couple in which the gentleman, had a divorce 25 years ago and could not get, like the certified paperwork for distribution of assets, my recommendation was, listen, you've been trying to do that for 4 months. You spent a lot of money and it looks like you're not getting anywhere. So, in your case, I think that you could marry in the state of Utah. Okay, the state of Utah is making very easy for people to marry remotely, meaning that the Brazilian partner is not gonna need to travel to Utah. The Brazilian partner could be in Brazil, and the other partner could be like in Utah or even in a different state, because Utah realized, given like this whole nonsense red tape in some jurisdictions, they, basically developed a new business line by making easy for people to marry. Kind of, the Las Vegas thing, less than, the craziness about, marrying overnight or marrying with, I don't know, like an impersonator of Elvis, right? So Utah is more like straightforward. They say, listen, if you are having, a hard time marrying in your state or country, just come over here. We're going to do everything remotely through a video conference, and you're going to be good. So that's what we are recommending for any of our clients who are stuck with a Brazilian red tape, all right? Now, very often we're going to hear something like this, well, but we want to have something in Brazil because, most of the participants are going to be from the Brazilian partner side. And then what I'm going to tell them is like, listen, this is going to be the civil marriage, right? So you do the civil marriage in Utah. And by all means, have like the big party, like the church or, synagogue or mosque, whatever you're going to do. You can do it in Brazil. But the civil marriage, you do it in Utah and you skip this whole nonsense, right? This thing in Brazil is completely out of hand. I can tell you, people from the legal community, they think, the cartório registry approach in Brazil is beautiful, is amazing, is the best in the world. Maybe for them who are making big bucks, but I can tell you, not for people using the system, all right? And there you go. That's my tip on the marriage route. All right, let's go back to our chat window. All right, I see here Gary Happener. Boa tarde, Dr. Oliveira. Boa tarde, Gary. For purposes of retirement visa qualification, do they use gross or net Social Security and other pensions? Also, do they tax 15% on gross or net for taxes in Brazil? Gary, in our experience, they're going to be looking at gross. So as of today, the requirement for you to qualify for the Brazilian retirement visa is like $2,000. So let's say if you're making $2,000 or $2,010, you're going to qualify, even if your net is, I don't know, like $1,800 US dollars. But listen, you're showing that you're getting, like the 2010 usually that's enough. Okay, like in our experience, we never had a case in which the person was declined. Okay, but something else you can do on such a borderline cases, right? If it's your case, like a borderline case, what we recommend our clients is to add an additional source of income, because Brazil, like the regulation for the retirement visa, it says that if you cannot send like the $2,000 a month from retirement alone, you can add an additional source of income as long as most of your income is coming from retirement. Okay, so trying to explain in simple terms, it means if you don't have the 2,000 to send, if you don't have even like 1,800, but if you have, let's say, 1,500 coming from retirement, and if you happen to have a rental property generating an additional 500 in income, guess what? You can combine both sources of income. But again, the main one gotta be retirement. Okay, that's the language in the regulation. If your retirement income is not enough by itself to reach the $2,000 a month, then yes, you can bring like something additional as a supplement. Okay, as a supplement, but very clearly you cannot have like the other way around. You cannot come up with I have rentals for 1,500 and I happen to have Social Security for 600. If you come up with this combination, your visa is not going to be approved. Okay, but if you have 1,800, if you have a 1,500 from retirement, and then you bring like 500 from rental, or even like stock investments, Vanguard funds, whatever you have, Brazil is going to say, all right, like I see most of the income is from retirement. I'm going to allow them to use something that's not typically retirement to meet the total. All right, Gary. So that's the first part of your question. The second one, also, do they tax 15% on gross or net? Right. So Brazil is going to tax 15 on the gross. Right. That's how taxation on income works. Brazil is not going to tax your net funds or your net income in the United States. Brazil is going to tax your gross income in the United States. Okay. Now, the upside over here is that Brazil traditionally is going to allow you to use whatever you paid in taxes in the United States as a credit. So yes, the 15% you're going to pay in Brazil over your retirement income is going to be on the gross, but there is a very good chance you're going to get whatever you paid in the United States and apply as a credit to your tax liability in Brazil. Okay, so that's, there is no double taxation, right? And I had a consultation this week. I explained everything that I just told you, like in details to this client. And at the end of the day, he said, well, I don't want to have a double taxation on a single income. And I understand, the way you're going to see this thing is going to be the way you see it. I'm not going to change that, but there is no double taxation, right? I just said what you pay in one country is going to be applied as a credit in the other country, most probably not. But some people, they still look at it and say, well, I see two governments, taxing this thing is double taxation. I don't want to do it. So, of course, your decision. But usually my take on the Brazilian side of the equation is the following. Listen, if you're going to be living in Brazil 5 days a year, like you gotta pay taxes in Brazil. You cannot live in a country and believe that there is any common sense take on saying that you shouldn't be paying taxes, right? If you should not be paying taxes, in my opinion, it should be to the United States, because listen, you are enjoying Brazil, like the infrastructure, the safety, the security, the cities, the infrastructure. That's how things work, right? Like you live in a place, you need to pay taxes in that place. Now, I understand the concern, particularly if you are retired, the more taxes, the less available income you have to spend. So pretty fair concern. And when that's the case, we usually, for our clients, of course, we share. There is a friend of ours. He's a tax attorney. The only thing he does is like taxation, and he's gonna do sometimes, like a tax optimization comparison. Taking a look to different routes you can take, and help you maximize your money. Bill is reminding us, like, for all of you, if you could please do me a favor and like our live stream. That's pretty helpful. That's going to be helpful for us. That's also going to be helpful for other people like you to find this content. So if you haven't liked our live stream before, please do me a favor and like it now. That's going to be really appreciated. I see here Adabi, Tony, Taodi. Adabi, thank you. Adabi says, thanks so much for the info. You're pretty welcome, Adabi. Happy to see you over here. And I want to see you all, back here on Wednesday when it's our next live stream. Ok, Telly Taylor, boa tarde, Luciano. Boa tarde, Telly. Good to see you over here on the top of Digital Nomad Visa. Have you seen your clients? What have you seen your clients do in terms of work? And do you have any job referrals, recommendations for jobs or job boards, etc.? So, Telly, remember, the Digital Nomad Visa, it's a visa for people who are going to be working abroad. Okay, so Digital Nomad Visa, you're not going to be using this visa if you don't have a job abroad. So when you say like a recommendation for jobs or job boards, if you're talking about jobs in Brazil, that's not going to be compliant. Okay, Telly? The idea for the Digital Nomad Visa is that you're getting money elsewhere and you bringing this money to spend in Brazil. So that's the whole idea, the whole concept of the Digital Nomad Visa from the Brazilian government's perspective. Okay, now what happens very often, and it did happen on Friday, right? Like on Friday, I had a consultation with a client. And very interesting, like she is from Tokyo, she's from Japan, and she creates adult content for, what is the name of the super famous nowadays, website for adult content, OnlyFans. Like, I mean, she's like a producer for OnlyFans, right? And she said, listen, can I use my contract with OnlyFans as a means to apply for the digital nomad? And my answer was, you cannot, okay, for two main reasons. The first reason is because whatever contract is coming from OnlyFans is not going to be compliant, because I know the requirements from the Brazilian immigration, they are kind of weird. They are never in any contract out there, okay? So usually, if you have a non-compliant contract, the way you're going to fix the non-compliant contract is to add a cover letter with the missing information, okay? And just to give you some of the information that's going to be missing in most of the contracts. The first one is going to be like, letter, a specific text saying, or specific language saying that you can work remotely, right? Let's say if you have a contract for marketing, right? Like most contracts in the United States, they do not spell out, yes, you can work remotely, okay? So this language usually you need to have in a cover letter. There is also a language needed saying that whatever contract you're providing is going to be good for a whole year after the signature date. So there are, about 4 or 5 points we usually going to add to a cover letter and ask for our client to get signed by their employer, okay? But going back to our client. So our client with the contract from OnlyFans is not going to be compliant. That's the first problem. And the second problem is, OnlyFans is not going to sign any cover letter, right? They say, listen, you get whatever, it's created automatic whenever you sign up with us, and don't bother us with cover letters or letters of verification, right? That's pretty much for anything such as Upwork, OnlyFans, or any other platform in which you work in exchange for money, right? Like you provide a service in exchange for money. So what do you do in such cases? And my explanation to this client was, listen, in addition to OnlyFans, do you do anything else? And she said, well, I actually assist my mother. My mother has a restaurant in Tokyo, and I do the marketing for her website. And I said, this is just perfect, okay? You're going to ask because you already work for your mother, and it's kind of informal, but she was actually working for her mother. And I said, you're going to go to your mother and you're going to ask your mother to provide a letter of verification. And again, it doesn't need to be formal employment as long as your mother is going to sign a letter of verification of work that is compliant with the requirements from the Brazilian immigration. Okay, so she's going to hire our firm. We're going to get her a template with exactly the information she needs. And her mother, who's the owner of a restaurant in Tokyo, she's gonna sign the letter basically saying, listen, my daughter, she works as a marketeer. She handles our social media. She updates our website and blah, 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 blah. Right? With that in mind, she's going to qualify for the Brazil Digital Nomad Visa, even though she would not qualify based on her content creation on the OnlyFans website. All right, Ellie. So what I'm saying over here is that usually, particularly for people who have like different streams of income and different types of remote work, it may be possible for you to find some of the work you already do qualifying for the digital nomad visa. All right. I hope that was helpful. All right. We have a question from Bill. Bill is asking, if I'm retired in the USA, can I come to Brazil to work instead of retirement? Yes, Bill. So something very interesting. That's a good question, because many people, when they come to Brazil under the retirement visa, they assume they cannot work. That's not actually the case. The retirement visa for Brazil, the purpose, or let's say the big take, the big advantage seen by the Brazilian government is that you bring in like consistent income to spend in Brazil, right? So this is the value that you bring into the table. Like if you are retired in the United States, I'm going to give you an example. Like many of our clients for the retirement visa, they are from the U.S. military, or they are, from the police force. Okay, maybe because, their income is consistent, is not bad. They usually make, I don't know, between $3,000 to $4,000 a month. But, let's be honest, like $3,000 to $4,000 a month in the United States, it doesn't get you too far, okay? But $3,000 to $4,000 in Brazil, particularly if you're living like in the Northeast, or if you're living in the North, or if you're living like in the countryside of Brazil, that's a really decent amount for you to live really well in Brazil. Okay, so not surprisingly, I would say most of our clients, maybe 40% of our clients, they are coming from military or police personnel. Okay, and now something that I think it's very positive, like for the Brazilian retirement visa, is that Brazil doesn't want you to be actually retired in a sense that you're not doing anything. Brazil just wants you to have the income of a retired person. So let's say if you are retired in a sense that you're getting a $2,000 paycheck from Social Security, you are retired for the purpose of the visa. But if on top of that, let's say if you want to teach business English to Brazilians, that's something you can do it without any problems, okay? Because, and I like this approach because if you think it through, Brazil does not want people, like who are not doing anything to come to Brazil. They actually want people who are active, who are healthy, and able to do things, for the society, for their peers, for other Brazilians, for other foreign citizens. So that's the beauty of the Brazilian retirement visa, I would say, that you just need to have retirement income, but you don't need to be retired definitely or for good. And that's a very common question we have over here in our consultations. What is the minimum age, right? Like, how do I prove I am retired? Brazil is not concerned with your age. Brazil is not concerned that you are retired for good. Brazil just wants you to have at least $2,000 a month to spend in Brazil. If you meet this requirement, no minimum age, and I like to share every now and then, like one of our youngest applicants for the Brazilian retirement visa, he is in his 20s. Okay, like we have a personnel from the U.S. military already approved for the retirement visa in their 30s, and now we have a candidate, and he's like in the final stages of the journey to be approved in his 20s. I'm not sure if he's 27 or 28, but of course, naturally, here at the firm is a big point of attention because it's so amusing and amazing. That this gentleman, he's in his 20s and is being approved for the Brazil retirement visa, okay? So pretty interesting. Telly is asking, where can clients find a job to teach business English? The best jobs, Telly, they would come from referral, okay, from referral. I know that big U.S. companies in Brazil, such as Microsoft, KPMG, and like any Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 in Brazil, they are gonna have a list of business English teachers, right? So they keep a log. So what you could do, like if you're gonna be teaching English, right? Like as a retiree, right? Because remember, if you are under the digital nomad visa, Telly, just remember, digital nomad visa, you need to work outside of Brazil, okay? Digital nomad visa does not allow you to work remotely in Brazil, right? So if your customer, if your client, if your student is in Brazil, this goes against the digital nomad visa. But kind of adapting your question to those of you who are interested in the retirement visa, if you get the retirement visa, there is no issue with working in Brazil. All right, Marcela. Marcela says, I think you talk about it in your videos, but remind me, can I work using the golden visa in Brazil? How about Portugal? If you know, in Spain, you may work with a golden visa, not sure about the others. Very interesting question, Marcela. And before answering, just a heads up that we are almost done with our very interesting live stream today. Our next live stream is going to be on Wednesday. Don't forget, it's going to be on Wednesday, October 16th. But then the time is not 3:30 in the afternoon. It's going to be 12:30 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. And then we're not going to have a live stream on Sunday, the 20th. All right, no live stream next Sunday. But we have a live stream next Wednesday. So keep in your calendar. If you go to our channel right now, you can click on notify me for our live stream on the 16th. Now answering Marcela's question. Marcela, so golden visas traditionally, they are just like the one you're talking about the Spanish or Spaniard, better saying, right? The golden visa from Spain. Yes, you can work, and that's going to be the same thing for Brazil, and it's going to be the same thing for Portugal. Really, really, really high level, high-level visas, and therefore they are going to come with pretty much, most of the things you would expect from a high-level visa. In Brazil, yes, you buy a property nowadays, 1 million reais. You gotta buy a qualifying property. You gotta buy from a qualifying seller, and you're gonna send your money in a qualifying manner. Okay, if you miss any of those requirements, you don't get the golden visa. But if you buy a property in Brazil in a qualifying manner, okay, you're gonna get the residency in Brazil first for 4 years, and after that it's gonna be permanent. And within everything you get, you can work for anyone in Brazil. You get the residency, even the initial 4 years, okay? This allows you to work because it's based on the golden visa. And this is gonna be the same thing for Portugal. Now, because we're talking about both countries, Brazil it represents a much better deal. In Brazil, you're gonna buy a real estate, which it doesn't bring you any headaches to maintain, kind of, when you compared it to investing in a company. So pretty sweet deal. You buy a property nowadays for less than 200,000 US dollars. And yes, buy in a qualifying manner, you're gonna get the residency. Now in Portugal, unfortunately, it started last year and it concluded at the beginning of this year. The real estate purchase route is dead, okay, because it was creating a lot of price increase in Portugal. Portuguese people, not surprisingly, very natural, and I think in a justified manner, they got mad. They went after their Congress people, and they got the real estate route for golden visa dead on the track. So nowadays you cannot buy property in Portugal. And to make things even more challenging, like they increased the minimum amount to 500,000 euros. And, nowadays, the ones we are handling in Portugal, they are through investment in funds, right? So there are funds in Portugal that are qualifying for the golden visa. You invest 500,000 euros and you're gonna get the golden visa. But if you buy, for instance, an apartment in Lisbon for 1 million euros, you still don't get the golden visa because, again, the real estate route in Portugal was kind of removed just because of the price pressure on properties across Portugal. Portugal is a very small country, right? Like if you compare to Brazil, it's like, probably way smaller than São Paulo city by itself. I'm not talking about São Paulo state. I'm talking about São Paulo, right? The conurbation. We have 20 million people in São Paulo city alone. I don't recall how many people there are in Portugal, but it's probably about the same. Okay, so one city in Brazil, it's almost the same thing as the whole country of Portugal, right? So for Portugal, the golden visa wasn't working fine. For Brazil, it doesn't move the needle, right? It does not matter how many foreign citizens come to Brazil to buy properties. It does not move the needle because Brazil has continental dimensions. And just remember, right, if you consider the entire European Union, like the 27 countries of the European Union combined, they are smaller than half the size of Brazil. So if you have 2 times the European Union, it's still not the same size of Brazil. Brazil has huge, dimensions, even compared to the States. Like, I'm not sure if you guys know about it, but Brazil is bigger than the United States if you remove Alaska and Hawaii, right? Like, Alaska and Hawaii, they are not really part of the continental United States. So if you just take those 2 extras, Brazil is bigger than the United States. So it is, I like to say that whenever you work with Brazil from an immigration perspective, it is like you're getting access to an entire continent, all right, to so many different realities. And that's why we see so many people coming to Brazil no matter what, right? There are downsides of Brazil, but I feel that the upsides are, much more than the downsides, and therefore That's why so many people love Brazil and really choose to live in Brazil. So I'm gonna say thank you for all of you. I'm gonna ask Gary. Gary, I'm not gonna be able to address your question, but please save it for Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'm gonna be back here, and I hope to see all of you for more discussions about Brazil, about immigration, about real estate, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your Sunday.